and we'll go ahead and get started. If you're on the phone, a couple rules. What we'll do is we'll take questions at our sheriff's office first, and then we'll take them on the phone. I would ask that if your question has been answered by somebody else, that you just take that answer and use it. We get through, and so this should be done in about half hour, 45 minutes. I want to start by saying that the sheriff's office is extremely very sympathetic to the community of Laytonville and to a family that has suffered a mass tragedy today. This morning at around 00:15, so 15 minutes after midnight, is when the incident that I'm going to explain started. The sheriff's office was notified approximately 30 minutes later, and our units responded from Willits with approximately 25-minute response, and responded with Long Valley Fire, CAL FIRE, and ultimately the Department of Justice and the District Attorney's Office has joined us. I've been in touch with our District Attorney several times today, David Neister. David Neister and I have spoken several times to discuss this, and I'm very comfortable with the direction that the investigation is going. But as I said, around 15 minutes after midnight, a subject by the name of Talen, T-A-L-E-N, Clark Barton, B-A-R-T-O-N, 19-year-old white male from Laytonville, was staying at a residence that we've been told that was a foster care situation for him, and I have not confirmed that, but that's what we've been told by people at the scene. And when the incident started, he was in bed. He left his bedroom, and he chose a knife in the kitchen and went into the bedroom of a 17-year-old male subject and assaulted him with a knife, and great resistance was met, and he ultimately killed the 17-year-old with the knife. He left the room. A 54-year-old female came to the aid of the 17-year-old, and the 54-year-old female was also attacked by Barton. This victim is not deceased. She was flown to another hospital, and she's listed as being in critical but stable condition. After the female was attacked, Barton attacked a 52-year-old male with a knife and mortally wounded him in a very brutal crime scene. The victim then chased the female that he had first assaulted down the stairs, and the victim screamed and awoke two juvenile female teenagers who were in the house, and also another 52-year-old male that was in the house. Barton stabbed the 52-year-old male, and he did not die. He was flown to a hospital where he is also listed in critical and stable condition. The sheriff's office, upon arrival, found that the 54-year-old female was alive. The deputy sheriff applied pressure to her neck where the wounds were, and ultimately saved her life until she was able to be transported by ambulance and by helicopter to the hospital. While the 54-year-old female was laying there, no calls to 911 had been made at that time, and the suspect told the two female juveniles that nobody was to call 911 until 8 o'clock in the morning, until he had arranged to get transportation out of there. One of the females was able to talk him into calling 911, and he did ultimately call 911, and our dispatchers were able to keep him on the line during the time that our deputies were responding, and until the response. During the response from the deputy sheriffs, the suspect changed all of his clothing. His clothing was apparently extremely blood-soaked. He changed his clothing, and he upon our arrival, he admitted to our deputy sheriffs that he was a very self-admitted heavy user of marijuana. He used marijuana basically to stay high. Basically, if he wasn't asleep, he was high on marijuana. And while he was on the phone to dispatch, he did smoke quite a bit of marijuana, knowing that the deputy sheriffs were on their way. And so I want to recap what I've said. A 17-year-old male subject was mortally wounded in a knife attack. A 54-year-old male was wounded, or fatally wounded, in a knife attack this morning. A 52-year-old male was critically wounded, and he is listed as critical and stable. And a 54-year-old female was critically wounded, but she is alive, and both of those victims are expected to survive this attack. We have been told that there was a foster relationship between the suspect and his assault victims. I don't know the specifics of that, so I'm not going to guess at where that was. We'll certainly find that out in the upcoming weeks. The Sheriff's Office, Mendocino County Sheriff's Office, has had one contact with Barton in the past, in January of 2013. We did have a criminal contact with him. He was a juvenile at that time, and I'm not at liberty at this time to discuss what that criminal contact was. So at this point, we cannot release the names of the victims because the next of kin notification has not been made as of yet. We're attempting to do that as we speak, and it may be done by the end of the day. But upon the notification of the next of kin of the victims, we will release the decedents' names, but not releasing the names of the injured victims until until we can discuss this with the district attorney. So that's the absolute tragedy that occurred in Mendocino County this morning. Are there any questions in this room? So there's not, so I'll go to the phone. If you could say who you are, who you represent, and your question, please.
Hey Tom, Adam, UCI Daily Journal.
Okay, Adam.
Did this suspect say what his motive was exactly, or?
We don't know what his motive was, Adam. However, our investigation has at least led us to one indication that over the last 2 weeks, he has a friend who he has been discussing killing somebody with, not with a friend in tandem, but he's just been discussing killing somebody, and none of this information was brought to law enforcement's attention. So I don't know the motive at this point.
And why was there so many people in the house? Were all these foster children?
Nope, no. I think he was the only foster element in the residence. Everybody else was either living there or visiting from another area. Several of the victims were Canadian citizens. We have been in contact with the Canadian Embassy and the authorities in Canada who are assisting us with notifications.
Okay, thanks.
Tom, this is Derek Moore from the Press Democrat.
Okay,
How
Derek.
many people total? Hi. How many people total were in the house at the time of this incident?
I believe 7. Yeah, we have the suspect, 3 adults, the juvenile male victim, and 2 teenage females.
Do you think that
I'm sorry, Linda, hold on 1 second. Derek, say it again.
Hi, when you mentioned Canadian citizens, was this like a place where people were staying, visiting, like a youth hospital?
No. The Canadian were relatives of the residents, And so this was all, for the most part, all family.
And can you give I don't think you mentioned exactly where this occurred. We had a general idea of the location. Is it still the same place?
And the email I sent out this morning said Meadowbrook, and that was incorrect. It was Meadow Lane in Laytonville, and Meadow Lane is approximately 2 miles northwest of the town of Laytonville. And one part of the crime that I failed to talk about, while law enforcement was responding, well, actually, before the 911 call had been made, the suspect did cut a charger cord from a phone charger and had one of the female victims tie up the deceased stab victim, who was the adult deceased stab victim, and tie up herself. I apologize for getting that. All right, Linda Williams, go ahead.
Yeah, I had 2 questions. One, how did you guys get called the first time, since you were already responding when you had the guy on the line?
Well, that's how we got called. One of the female juveniles was able to convince the suspect to call 911. And so ultimately, he was the one who called 911 to make a report of the incident.
Okay, and when you were first talking about the list of victims, you called one of the other deceased male. You said he was 52, and then later you said 54.
My mistake. He was 54. 52 was the person who was injured.
Okay, good deal. All right, thank you. That's what I needed. Thank you.
Wait, hold on 1 second, Linda.
Males are 52.
Wait, both males are 52. So the only 54-year-old person is the female who's in the hospital.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Next question, please.
Well,
Okay.
this is Derek again,
Okay.
from the Press Democrat.
Right.
So I got a little confused in the sequence of events. After stabbing the 17-year-old, he was headed down the stairs, and then he attacked the 54-year-old woman. And then he was heading downstairs and somehow came into contact with the juveniles, the females.
No. At that point, okay, so let me just say it again.
Please try your call again. We're sorry. Your call.
See, that's,
Done this twice on this phone.
I know it, okay. So, the assaults began at 00:15 hours. He attacked, are you still there, Derek?
Yes, I am.
Okay, he attacked the 17-year-old and ultimately killed him. It was a very violent struggle. And the mother, the 54-year-old woman, heard the struggle and started going to that location, and that's where the suspect assaulted her at the top of the stairs. And then she escaped and went down the stairs, and that's when the 52-year-old subject who the first one came in contact with him, and he was fatally injured. And then the suspect went downstairs where the second 52-year-old male confronted him, and the suspect stabbed him in the chest area. And his wounds include a wound to the heart area. And then the juvenile females came out at that point.
And the 52-year-old that was stabbed in the chest is the individual who died, is the male who died, the older.
No, the 52-year-old who was stabbed in the chest is in critical but stable condition, but actually the other 52-year-old male was stabbed multiple times in the chest and neck area.
And so did the suspect with the juvenile females, what happened in his interaction with them? Did he threaten to stab them or assault them, or?
He did not. Actually, he indicated to our detectives that he had not intended to harm the juvenile females. And he smoked his marijuana, had them tie up the male decedent, the adult male decedent, and then had one of the juvenile females tie herself up as he was awaiting for law enforcement.
Thank you.
I certainly will.
This was Lake County News.
Okay.
Sheriff Ullman, can you say how long he was living in that home, and did he come from Mendocino County or did he come from elsewhere?
He did not come from Mendocino County, and I do not know the answer to how long he's been in Mendocino County. I know that, as I said earlier, The sheriff's office dealt with him in January 2013. But as a juvenile, I don't know how much time prior to that he was in our county.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
And just to clarify, it was okay, sorry.
I'm sorry?
Adam over the News Journal again.
Okay, Adam, go ahead.
What was the size of the weapon? What kind of knife was it? Is it a steak knife or?
It was a knife that he had obtained from the kitchen, and the overall length was approximately 12 inches.
Okay, thanks.
So,
Derek, I just want to double confirm where we're calling this location. It's Meadow Lane, 2 words?
that's correct, Meadow Lane, 2 words.
Okay.
And there's two sections of Meadow Lane.
Sorry.
There's a north section of Meadow Lane and a south section. This is on the south section of Meadow Lane.
Do you have a block number?
I don't. So at this point, the crime scene is still being processed by the Sheriff's Office, by the Department of Justice, the California Department of Justice, by the Mendocino County District Attorney's Office, and we're in contact with CPS to provide emergency housing and placement for the 2 juvenile females until at least one of their parents can be notified and respond.
Sheriff, can you be this is Derek again. Can you be any more specific about the relationships with these people? You said they're relatives. Can you diagram that out a little more as who's
Derek,
the parents, the juveniles?
we have a little quagmire here because we're waiting on the death notification to go through. Otherwise, it's going to, with social media, it's going to even go faster than what it already is to the next of kin.
Okay. Where is your suspect now? Where's Barton now? He's in
Barton
Mendocino
is in Mendocino County Jail. At 4:15, so 1 minute ago, his photograph was placed on our booking log. So if you go to MendocinoSheriff.com, you'd be able to go to the booking log where Barton has been booked for 2 counts of 187 homicide and 2 counts of attempted homicide.
And when is he scheduled to be in court? You know?
I have no idea. I would imagine his preliminary hearing will be, I'm going to guess Tuesday, and that would go along with the legal process.
You mean arraignment?
I'm sorry, the arraignment, yes.
Okay. And are you doing anything more by way of, can you give any insight into the investigation now into this?
Sure.
What are you doing now?
So the investigation is continuing, obviously, at the crime scene with the Department of Justice and the Sheriff's Office and DA's office. We'll be contacting neighbors and friends. We certainly want to find out if any information was passed on that should have been given to law enforcement to prevent such a heinous crime. And we have every detective in the Sheriff's Office is working on this case today. Laytonville is a beautiful town, and for something like this to happen in Laytonville is a pure tragedy, and we certainly want the people of Laytonville to know that we're sincerely going to investigate this and as quick as possible, but as fairly as possible, and allow the court system and the justice system to take this course.
When was the last time there was a homicide in Laytonville, Sheriff?
It has not been this year. I'm going to say it's been several years. I don't have that in front of me right now, so it's a fair question. I just don't have it in front of me.
And finally, this is Derek again. This will be my last one. Just to confirm the suspect's name again, Talen, T-A-L-E-N, middle of Clark, C-L-A-R-K, and then Barton, B-A-R-T-O-N.
Right, 19-year-old white male.
And you're calling him a Laytonville resident, because that was where he was actually living, is that home?
At this point, I don't know of any other residence that he had other than Laytonville. Yeah, and I'm going to guess it's up. Has anybody been able to check to see if the booking photo is up?
It is.
It is. So it was
up.
confirmed that booking photo's up. Okay.
It is up, but they've got the bond amount as $20,000.
Okay. Well, that's incorrect. Yeah, we'll be correcting that momentarily because I think at this point they're just processing it, and it'll be changing as they finish the processing.
What is it? Is it a no bail?
Well, at this point, it's not a no bail, but it'll be certainly higher than $20,000.
And I'm sorry, but they're Laytonville residents, but was he actually living at this home? Was this his residence?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that he was sleeping there that last night, but I don't know if this was his permanent residence.
And you can't say if these were his foster, like, parents, for instance?
I'm not going to get into that right now, Derek, but thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, well, just in closing, the Sheriff's Office certainly appreciates what DOJ, the District Attorney, CPS is doing for us, and the Long Valley Fire Department and our first responders. This is a tragedy. It could have been worse, but the fact that we have trained first responders arriving and doing what we expected them is the reason that we have one less victim today. So, homicide victim. All right, thank you all very much.